right, hey folks. So I was called upon by none other than Paris Butler, Bald Omni Man, to make my own list of top 10 exercises that I would do if I reverse time, started from scratch again. What would be the ways to quickly build up the most amount of muscle that I ever had? So we'll kick off with the first one. This exercise is the premier back exercise that a lot of people are missing in their routines, a rearward shrug. So just to give you a bit of a background on this, back in the 80s and 90s, there was an American who lived out in Japan, and he was the head of the national powerlifting team over there. And he was a guy called Paul Kelso, and he wrote a book called The Shrug Book, and listed in it was all different types of shrugs. Upward shrugs, like standard, but also rearward shrugs, forward shrugs, all different kinds of shrugs. And the one which caught on was the most popular was the rearward shrug. And I really enjoy it. For me, it was my secret weapon exercise that I used during my powerlifting career and also for bodybuilding. If you can imagine, your back training is pretty much always limited by what you can pull with your arms. So you have an exercise like this, you are no longer limited by your arms, just literally by what you can hold and what the back can handle. So the poundage potential is huge once you get used to it. Most people find they quickly surpass what they're doing with their rows just with this rearward shrug. So if you were using 100 kilos on rows, you'll quickly move past that. I prefer doing this on a cable row setup because it's nice and easy. And I will then rearward shrug for what is pretty high volume. The back is a very resilient body part. You can beat it up completely. And this exercise is a great way to end a back workout. So something like 5 sets or so is not too much, even a couple of times a week. This is a great exercise. It works the entire back, any muscle which is attached to the scapula. What you want to try and do with this is you want to fully let your scapula extend on the way forward and then pull back. That will work the entire back. I think everybody should do this exercise. It's called the Kelso Shrug. All right, next exercise is for the abs. The premier exercise that built my abs the most was cable crunch. I think this is probably close to the only exercise you'll ever need for the abs, aside from just squats, deadlifts, and other isometric exercises. It's a fantastic exercise. However, it is contingent on you being able to flex your spine. A lot of people have difficulty with that. A lot of people will just bend over at the hip. You must perform spinal flexion. That is the way this exercise works. Just to visualize it, imagine you're lying on the floor and doing a standard crunch where you roll your spine and you try and pull your shoulders towards your hips. You do that, but with weight. And if you can't get the hang of it, start lighter. Get the hang of the spinal flexion. Okay, next is hamstrings. Leg curls for me was a superb addition, and I still like to do them for high volume and multiple times a week if I can. The next exercise is the weighted dip. Back in the day, they used to call this the upper body squat because it was so effective at putting muscle on people. I don't know how true that is for everyone, but for me, it certainly was. I stalled on the bench press in the early years. So I stalled at a 200-pound bench. And at the time, I was squatting 350, deadlifting 500. So the bench was way behind. And I switched over to doing dips. It really filled me out. Built a lot of mass, built muscle all over my chest, shoulders, triceps, even built my upper pecs. It was a great exercise. So I would definitely put my vote in for weighted dips as one of the premier chest and entire upper body exercises. Next is for biceps. Firstly, just more bicep work in general. But secondly, this specific exercise, which is a fantastic exercise, you can call it a Bayesian curl. So basically, you curl by standing just directly in front of the weights, letting your arms extend backwards, your elbows behind your body, and then curling up while keeping your arms stationary and locked behind you. It's a great exercise, and because it's done with cables, the stress is very much evenly spaced across the movement. So you get a nice stretch, but you also get a nice contraction. Great exercise, allows you to isolate the biceps, which is quite difficult to do. If you start to do very heavy curls with barbells and dumbbells, and you're already quite a strong guy, it becomes difficult to isolate them because the rest of your body takes over and you use a bit of momentum. So I would go for very strict cable curls. Makes a big difference, not only for bicep size, but also for bicep health. And next is the skull over. Typically when you do a skull crusher or lying tricep extension, most people get quite beat up elbows. The slight bend backwards of the elbows allows you to take a lot of stress off the tendons. You still get all the advantages of a skull crusher, but without the elbow stress. And on top of that, you actually stretch your tricep at the shoulder, which can potentially be more beneficial. All right, next thing is for the delts. Side laterals were something I avoided just like curls, and I paid for that because once I had finished my powerlifting career, I didn't really have particularly great shoulders. So I had to spend a long time specializing on the shoulders and also the biceps to try and get them bigger again. So yeah, I wish I had done more lateral work, whether that was with dumbbells, with cables, with machines. I personally find dumbbells are some of the best. You can also do variations like seated high incline dumbbell laterals. You could do Lou raises, all good variations, but my preference has always been the standard dumbbell side. All right, now if we go into the final three, these were my predominant main powerlifting assistance exercises that I would do year round to get stronger in the main lifts. So first of all, I squatted low bar, wide stance. Now, the problem with that was twofold. Firstly, the judges were very inconsistent about giving me white lights. And secondly, the development of my legs. I just didn't have a great deal of mass in the lower part of the quads. When I started to do high bar medium stance squats, my quads just transformed. And the year or so that I spent relearning squats and learning how to do them with a high bar medium stance and with mass at the top of my quads, big adductors, and just no teardrop, just to being nice and streamlined and looking like bodybuilder quads. And next is the deadlift back. I think when you get to a certain point, you should gravitate towards the deficit stiff leg deadlift. When you get so strong that the stiff leg deadlift becomes dangerous, I think you should gravitate towards a deficit stiff leg deadlift so that you lower the absolute load. I think that would have been a little bit safer. Deleverage yourself, essentially. So just like you with a bench press, you'd go to a close grip bench press. With a deadlift, you go to a stiff leg and then to a deficit stiff leg. Just constantly trying to deleverage yourself so you can train the lift more often with more volume and build up more strength. Finally, for the bench, my premier assistance exercise for the bench was the close grip bench. The close grip bench press really is a great exercise because it's essentially a longer range of motion bench press. The incline close grip is an even longer range of motion bench press. So if you can build up to some pretty big weights with the incline close grip, odds are your close grip is going to improve and your main bench is going to improve too, all without having to use that really heavy loading that you might do with a bench press or a close grip bench. So think of that progression as something you would do as you get stronger and stronger throughout your career. In the initial stages, sure, just stick with the bench or the deadlift. As you get stronger, move to the stiff leg deadlift and the close grip bench. As you get really strong, then you might want to rotate in a deficit stiff leg deadlift alongside an incline close grip bench press. All right, folks, those are my top 10 exercises and variations and the predominant exercises I would use if I were to do it all over again. So thank you very much for listening. Paris, thank you very much for the idea and the shout out. It's a really good idea. And I love when we try and get these communities together. So as for my shout out, I would like to hear from Steve Shaw of Massive Iron. Steve, what are your top 10 exercises? As well as Corel from Stand Strength. And also, I would like to hear from Landon from Basement Bodybuilding. We've already heard from Freaky D, and we've heard from a few others. So we'll go with those guys, and hopefully we'll have a nice community answer. So take care, everyone. Have a great week.